not have a clan for your faith? 1, 2, 3. How many in here are ravens? 1. Eagles? 1, 2. Kind of?
Killer whale.
Oh, okay. Okay. And that's
Yes.
So we'll keep you on the eagle side. So that means you 3 need. So we have, bring us pretty good balance. A couple years ago, we tried to figure out what to do, because when we get to the section of introductions, there's a number of ways to take care of it. One is you can use ethnicity in place of clans. I saw somebody in Club one time stand up and introduce himself in Tlingit, and he used his Scottish clan lineage in place, and just totally gave it a real proper Tlingit introduction. It's pretty amazing. Everybody was pretty impressed. But we also have a stopgap solution that we came up with for teaching Tlingit, so that nobody feels left out. And Ton, hey, are you on the phone?
Yes.
Do you have a Tlingit clan?
No, since the clan is, my mom's a Raven.
Okay, so we'll keep it on the Raven side. So we came up with 2 clans, one's an Eagle side and one's a Raven side. So it sounds like, so Eagles would have 1, 2, 3. Ravens so far would have 1, 2. That's it, right? So 3 and 2, we'll try to keep this straight. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so 3 and 3 so far. So that means 2 of you need to draw a random. Which one do you want? This one? Okay. So for those of you who need to be Raven clans, we have 2 invented clans for the class, and those of you who are Tsimshian, if you want to use your Tsimshian clans for this exercise, you can. If you know how to say those clans, and if you have houses. Otherwise, we can let you use the class clans. The 2 that they are is there's Shkun Ati, the people of the school, and Kayakajaitan, the people of the chair house. So we just sort of came up with that just so that people can have an introduction. And most people who learn Tlingit and just really, if they invest themselves in the culture, they tend to get adopted and they get names. Sometimes the class name they use becomes their name, and sometimes they get a different name. But for now, we're going to use this for the class. It doesn't necessarily mean you should go around and tell everybody that you now have a clan and stuff like that. Although if you get named, you become part of a clan. It just happens. And if you become part of a clan, you have obligations to that clan. There are people who get names, and sometimes these are big names, and then when it's time for the clan to do work, they're just kind of sitting around. So the other thing is having these, if you go to a traditional Tlingit function, ravens are seated somewhere and eagles are seated somewhere, you can just go sit with whichever group that you're sort of affiliated with for now. Because everybody, there's balance in clan relationships, so you're either doing work or you're sitting around while other people do work, and you shouldn't always be sitting around. You should be balancing that out, and having a clan identity really helps with that. So, that being said, we have a sheet that we're looking at today. It's a Tlingit introduction template. This is, we'll do some of this, then we'll go back into our Raven story. When class is over, I'll hand back your results from our language performances. And there's no class on Thursday, but I would like you to hand in your new sheet of words by Thursday. I can't remember what I said yesterday.
So tomorrow?
Let's just make it by Thursday. And you can either drop it in my box. I have a box in the Sokolon building, or you can just email them to me, whichever one. Or you can just bring them now or bring them tomorrow, whichever one. Whatever works for you. Okay. Yeah, so let's move into this handout. Oh, and there's Gage Cooch. Let's see. Let me make sure my microphone does. Gage Cooch, do you have a clan that you're affiliated with?
Pardon, Lance? Uni?
What's that?
Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Oh, do you have a clan, a Tlingit clan?
Cohitan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there's Chish. And nice. Did you get the handout?
Grinnesties.
So we're going to open that thing up. I'm going to put it on the screen. Hey. It looks like it's not letting me screen share, so whatever. Okay. So I'll put the handout on Tlingit.info. It's not working for now. So going through this template, we're going to learn how to sort of introduce ourselves, and we'll learn this piece by piece, and we'll talk about what each piece is doing. But we'll also talk about how to do this when you stand up in front of people, and we'll actually practice standing up in front of each other and giving an introduction. Now, as far as when you would give an introduction, I think we did touch on that, but basically, this shouldn't be the main composition of your Tlingit speech. If it is, and you're first getting started, that's just fine. To stand up and do this, and then to move into English. But you should be pushing yourself to move beyond this, and to actually, when you learn how to speak Tlingit, to retire this, unless the situation calls for it. If you're speaking to a group of people and you know a lot of them don't know you, then it's appropriate to give an introduction before speaking to the people. But a lot of times, traditionally, you wouldn't have done that. Someone would have introduced you or talked about who you were, and you would stand up and really just speak to people. One of the reasons is it's not a good idea to stand up and talk about yourself in public. There are times when maybe that's a good idea if you're called to give a speech to youth and you want to explain to them the path of your life. But there are certain situations where it's a bad idea actually to talk about yourself and your story. And that might be if you're asked to speak to a certain occasion, or if you're asked, to speak, or if you're speaking for your clan or your group at a funeral or some more serious event, then you definitely don't want to talk about yourself and your history. But learning how to introduce yourself is a really good idea as well, because as you get to know other Tlingit speakers, they're going to want to know who you are, who's your people, who's your family, and you want to be able to give proper responses. So we're going to practice the introduction, and then we're going to figure out there's a number of different ways you can do certain parts of this. And then once you actually give the introduction, you can actually remove a lot of things because you've established that I'm talking about myself, and then you can really sort of simplify what happens after that, which is why some things are in parentheses. We'll talk about it. All right. So the first thing is, let's just start with the fill in the blank part. We'll go around the room and everybody just say what your Tlingit name is. With the just on itself, just the name of itself.
Game talk was the
Like,
Bitmahala,
no way.
Yedusafin,
Wash to eat.
Judy,
Good name, and we'll go online. We got a couple folks with us.
Yes, Tla.
Monday,
Okay. Anyone else online want to go?
Honk.
Cheesh. Ratsuke? One in Carcross. It's exciting. Okay. Okay. So now comes the phrase, the fill in the blank phrase. Everybody just repeat after me. Yechat wasa.
Yechat wasa.
Yechat wasa.
Yechat
Wasa.
Yechat wasa.
Yechat
Wasa.
Now the ye part is totally, you can exchange you in place of ye, but you want to make sure that it's also going you wasa, so that the tone is on the ye or the you, or then on the sa in the throat. For years I was teaching it you wasa because we were changing that pronoun a lot, and so I was really trying to emphasize that pronoun, which kind of messed up the rhythm. Ye wasa. So now, we'll send this around and you'll say your name with this phrase, this first one. And before we do that, if we looked at this phrase, Yechat wasa, it's made up of 6 different things. If we're to sort of break it into pieces, what are any of those things that we can identify in that phrase? Yechat wasa, chat. And what does that mean in English?
I.
Me. Me. And what is it?
Objective.
It's an object pronoun. Good. Anything else? Do? Anybody know what that one means in English?
Them. For they.
Close.
Oh, look.
Do. Anybody know what it is?
He or she.
Well, okay, so the first one was an object pronoun, so this one is
Subject.
subject pronoun. And the subject pronoun de means people or someone. It has a really neat function. We'll just pay attention. And really it just means like the verb happens. People do this. Right? And it has a really interesting function in Tlingit. We call it the indefinite human. It just means it happens. Somebody does this type of thing. Anything else that we can peel out of there? Well, the wasa is if you were to ask somebody what their name is. So we've got. What's that?
You put that in after, like what?
Well, if we said wasa edu, that would be the question that would give this statement. So if we're just focusing on this statement, we want to pull these other parts out. The first thing is yea, and yea means like thus. And sometimes, just taking these things apart, when they get, it's doing the word-for-word translation, you always got to be careful. I think it's good to know what these things mean, but to know that when you put them together, we can put them together and think it. And sometimes they just match up, and not like a literal word-for-word definition. It doesn't always work well. The what part that's in here comes from the classifier, which is ya, which we write with a Y with 2 dots over it, because if there's any type of rounded vowel, which is a U or a double O before it, it will change it into a double. What? So you'd say, you could say yechat wasa, but you could also say yechat ayasa, or yechat yasa, he or she calls me this. So if the du leaves, then it goes back to the ya. The do is what makes it into a what. The verb root itself is sa, S-A-A. And that means to name or to call out. Sa. And then the KW is a repetitive suffix. Means it habitually happens. It happens on a regular basis. So what you're saying here, the literal translation is, people call me this. Right? So now we'll send this one around using your name and saying this whole phrase, right?
Intak was the yege du wasang.
Should I say in Inupiaq I'm called?
Sure. Oh, wait.
Inupiaq, Einach, Sumek, Yecher, Duasak.
Okay.
Ditmaroga Yechadusa.
Noea Yecha Dusa. Wesh Yeet Yecha Duasa.
Shuatin yege du wasang.
Okay. So, whoops. On the phone, let's do the phone first.
Okay, yay, I do what's wrong.
Okay. Now, online, going left to right. Yetuchta.
Yeshtutla Yechadusak.
Okay. Xiaosti.
Jodesti Yechadusa.
Hatank.
Hasank Yechat Duasak.
Okay. Very regal. That's the eagle there. Put you on the screen there. Right, there we go. Okay. So another way to say this without having a verb would be Aya achsayi.
Aya Achsayi.
Aya achsayi.
Aya Achsayi.
Aya achsayi.
Aya Achsayi.
So now we'll send this one around. Say your name and then say this phrase.
Intak was the aya achsayi.
Sumek, Aya, Ach, Sayid.
Ditmaroga Achsai.
Noea Aya Achsayi. Wesh Yeet Aya Achsayi. Ayit.
Shuatin aya achsayi.
On the phone
Contact, Aya, Sari,
and online.
Yeshtutla Aya Achsai.
Xiaosti.
Jodesti Ayaksai.
Hatank.
Hasank Aya Achsaye.
So the third option, and this is really, you just pick one, as far as when you're going to stand, if you were to introduce yourself, you say any one of these three. Just an option. 3 different ways to possibly say it. I've only heard one person say this, and we talked about it. I talked about the number of different speakers and teachers. We decided it means like if you have multiple names, this is saying this is one of my names. And it would be, the phrase would be Achsayichsati.
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 Okay.
Intak was the achsayi city.
Sumek, Ach, Sayich, City.
Ditmaroga Achsai City.
Noea Achsayichsati. Wesh Yeet Achsayichsati.
Shuatin achsayi city.
On the phone?
contact, Aya,
Aksayich City. Okay, online.
Yechtutla Achsayich City.
Paragraph.
Shriel de steed Aksayich City.
Okay. Hatank.
Hasank Aksayich City.
Okay. Next, so jumping down a section, we have Kate Kach Einach. Did I say that? Kate Kach Einach. 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 So we've got Glade. 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 Ka. Ka. Einach. Einach. So I think we do break down the history of that word in here. Okay. Ka. We do that here. Okay. So it goes through an evolution of parts here. I'm just going to write this on the board. You guys can see it online. Is there a tone in this one? Okay. So the evolution of this word, I guess. So on the board, there's 4 different things going from the oldest on top down to the newest on the bottom. So the first one is Guskikwan. 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 This is a 3-part word. So Kwan, we know what that means in English? People of? Yeah, people of a place. Who's, we know what that means in English? We haven't encountered that word yet. Anybody know? Cloud, or clouds. Okay. Do you know that one? It's the base of something. So we have these relational terms in Tlingit. We're going to run into a few of these. So it means, you know, we've got next to, or above, or below, around. So it's the people at the base of the clouds. So they show up in these big boats. The big boats are coming up from the horizon. It was probably a cloudy day. And so this was the first name that was given to folks who came to visit this area from Russia. The first ones are coming from Russia. And I guess Anushi should be up there as well. Anushi is the word that then became the Tlingit word for Russian. I don't know the whole history of that word either. But then you get down to one of the other types of things, Washtan Pon and Ginji Chuan. Those, as we sort of went from Guthwan to Anushi to Washtan Pon and Ginji Chuan. So looking at those, they both come from, you know, the Quan we can recognize in the first one, Washtan. But Washtan and Ginji Chuan both come from English. Any guesses on those?
Washington?
That's a good guess, but it's sort of
say police.
short of, well, yeah, Watchwind. But the one at the end is a pretty good guess for the bottom one. But Washington, a lot of people thought that as well, but it's missing a syllable. It would be like Washington or something like that. So the top one, Washington Quan, means American. It comes from Boston, Boston people. And then Ginji Chuan, Canadian.
Is that King George?
Yeah, King George man. So when you see that one at the end of a lot of words like watch one, it's for watchman, so the M becomes a W. It's pretty standard as far as when Tlingit people hear a word in English and just sort of Tlingitize it. These are the types of things that happen. And then those two words fade away and we end up getting pa, Glade being snow or white. So we talked about Glade, Snow White. And then pa is, in this case, a person. And so when we say Glade pa einach, everybody point at your mouth and say, ach, 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 ach. So is a mouth or an opening. Nach is to go through or along or via, like kanach, king kanach, it's going along the water. Tunach, it's going through the inside of something. This time of year, I always think of sitting with George Davis. He said, talking about these place names in Saginaw Bay. Shakawush, Ipuwasak, we Shah. There's a mountain that's called Hole on the Mountain. And there's a hole, a big hole up in the top of this mountain. And he says when the geese migrate, whether north or south, they all fly through there. It's really just fascinating. And if you go up, there's just goose feathers all over the place. It's just really. So that nach means through. So Kleed ha e nach.
Kleed ha e nach.
Kleed ha e nach.
Kleed ha e nach.
And then in parentheses, we got again yechet duasam. Now that's in parentheses because if you were standing up, if you used that yechet duasam, you wouldn't have to use it again. We're already there. So Tlingit is really interesting because the verbs start becoming optional in certain cases. And this is a case to try and streamline an introduction so it has this degree of, it sounds like it has some fluency to it, it's fluid. So if I stood up, I might say, if I can speak Tlingit, lands. That's it, right? You don't need to do the yechet duasam twice. But you might if you went lands yechet. Because in that case, the verb wasn't used. So it's just saying my name, and then I might use it in a second. But it's just sort of put it together how you want it type of thing. And it might change from time to time. And there might be another occasion where you might introduce yourself. Like, let's say I knew a bunch of stories. And one of the stories was something about like a Dr. migration, my grandfather's people. And if on some occasion they asked me to tell that story because I knew it, then I might stand up in front of people and before I even told it, I would give my lineage, but what I'm doing is I'm saying, these are my grandfather's people. And I would introduce myself so that they know. The other times introductions are used is if you stand up to address a clan and you want them to know how you're related, right? And you might just talk about, when you're using kinship terms and other things to talk about, this is how I'm tied to you. This is the reason I'm speaking the way that I am to you. Okay, so we'll do this whole phrase. So, take ha'inach, like yechet, and we'll send this one around.
Dleipach einach will yechet duasam.
Kleed ha einach David yechet duasam.
Sleep ha enach Alicia yechet dusa.
Kleed ha einach Austin yechet duasam.
Yecha enach Millie Yecha duasam.
Kleed ka Enoch. Well,
Nope, your English name.
oh, Nathan. Yechet duasam.
Leka Rena Karenza Yechat Duasak.
On the phone?
Leka Ena Victoria Ye Hadulasa.
Online?
Tlika Ina Colleen Yechat Duasak.
Art?
Gleka Kleina Gabel Yechdusak.
How's it going?
Leka Enach Andrew Yechat Duasak.
Okay. So this will be the last two we do for today. So moving down, we have Nachatzati.
Chatzati.
Nachatzati.
Chatzati.
Nachatzati.
Chatzati.
So if we just pulled the word na out of there, N-A-A, anybody know how to translate that?
It's like a clan.
Yeah, it means a clan or a tribe, a nation, a group of people that have a shared identity. Na. So what's going on here is we're putting this on the end. This is a locative. And so we've seen the use of the verb yeti to be a certain way. So we know the instance we've seen it is wasa yeti. How are you doing? How is your being? The other way is like you could say yegeti, something to be a certain way, right? So you get the thus part that pops up before it and saying it is this way. For example, they might say, that man is late. And someone might say, yay, Nati, he's always that way. Or if someone says, are you crazy? You might say, yay, Yati, I am crazy, that's how I am. But it means to be a certain way, right? To be something, right? And there's different ways we're going to see it pop up. We're going to see it also in terms of to be located in a certain place. But when we change the yet, which is the classifier, to sit, so it goes from what we call the zero group to the S group, the verb changes. So this is where we start thinking about the classifier and what it does in Tlingit. And so what we have is the root, which has the meaning, to be. And then the classifier starts to change how the verb functions. Oftentimes, it's called a classifier. Classifier it's called a classifier because of the Tlingit language. A lot of the Najani languages, they have the classifier, it functions in similar ways, but with Tlingit, the classifier usually is specifying what is specifically going on. And so it might just sort of change the way the action functions. So one way we think about this is we've seen the verb yateen. So we say chateen, to see something, right? Like if you guys are at my house and there's a bear that comes in the yard, right? Like a black bear, little black bear, not too dangerous. And I might say, see katsku chateen. I see a little bear, right? I see this little young bear. But if this is the same bear that comes
I think we lost him.
Kech uske. Masa ieti Colleen.
Chatioke, what eh?
Hatsu Klech was it?
I wonder what happened with the transmission.
Klech was a curious Kashnik.
Chatsu.
Okay, we're
Lusua.
Kusu Han. Can you guys hear us? Can you hear us and not see us?
I can hear you.
Okay, well, that I guess that'll do. Let me try to.
Kiden dua acht. Kiden dua teen.
We lost the thing on our end. So. Okay. Where did
Shkahari. Wasua.
my network is experiencing technical difficulties? Without technical difficulties, can you UAS. It rarely happens, actually. It rarely happens. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Can you see the introduction template on the screen? Okay, good. We'll just power through. Okay, so first of all, let's just go around the room. We'll practice these. Everybody just repeat after me. Yay.
Yay.
Chalk. Yay.
Yay.
Chalk. Now, if we go inland, it would still be yay. So it changes to whoop. That's the one that changes. Although when we speak English, yay becomes pro. It's really interesting. For now, we'll stick with yay. So go around and identify which side you are on.
Yes, nach City.
Nach City.
I don't know.
Yay.
Yes, nach City.
Chalk nach City.
Yes, nach City.
Chalk nach City.
Chalk nach City.
Yay. Nach. On the phone?
Anna, you will hold true.
So everybody, did you get the whole thing in Schmelgad? Or just the clan name?
I can go with some shoe.
Do you want to do it with the Nachratzati?
Anna, na,
Okay. Then online.
Yes, Nachatziti.
Yes, nach Hatziti.
Chak nach Chatziti.
Okay, so now we're going to go to clan affiliation, and we're just going to say the name of the clan. That's all we're going to do for this step. So, for example, I would say Shukach Adi. On the phone? Just the name of your clan. Ah, man, we get frozen. So online, I think we have Kuchitan.
Kuchitan.
Okay.
Cocaton.
Tatank.
Kagwantan nach Chatziti.
Okay. All right. So just saying the clan. So now if we put the locative onto the clan. And it doesn't matter, like you could say, if you said Yupik, or if you said you're a Tsimshian clan, you just put that on the end. And then we're not going to do the whole phrase, we're just going to practice putting that on the end of it. Because sometimes if it ends with an N, like if I said Tuk Ding Tong, Shukach Adi. This time I'll say Shuk.
Shkun Adich.
Could you say Inupiak Ha Ishbudwanach Ha Chat City?
Yeah, just say that, just don't do the Chet yet.
Shahun Adich.
Kagwantan
Itan.
Shun Ad.
Did you get the Kayakajit? Which one did I hand you?
Oh yeah, I was. Kaya Goji Jitan
Kayakajit.
Jitan.
Yep.
Yanyavich.
Okay. On the phone? Online? We're still connected?
Kokitan. Chatziti.
Okay.
Cocaton. Hatziti.
Kagwantan.
Okay. So now let's do the whole phrase. So I'm with Shukach Adich, and I'll just do the whole thing. When you have the cut, sometimes like it doesn't really stop ringing. It's okay if it does. For example, when I say Nach, you could say Nach Chatzati. But a lot of times, if you're just sort of in conversation, speaking the language, you say Nach Chatzati. So it just sort of does this little bit, or the ringing, however you want to take care of. So Shukach Adich Chatzati.
Shkun Adich Chatziti.
Inupiak Ha Ishbudwanach Chat City.
Shun Adi or
Shkun adich.
Shgun Adich Hatsati.
Kagwantan City.
Koketan Hatsati.
K Giatan.
Kayakajitan.
City.
Oh, just Chetzik.
City.
Yanidich Hatsati.
On the phone? Concave. Well, maybe it's time to transition to something else.
Who too?
Oh,
K Giatan.
that's got these kinship handouts. I'll give you that extra. Apparently I only have. My handouts got wild.
16.
16. So we left off an Atagi Egu. Today we'll start working through our clan list. We'll probably end up with about 26 or 27. Your final word list. So think about how they're going to tie together, how you're going to continue to memorize them and practice them as far as good pronunciation. So back to the Raven story. So this is the handout that's on the screen. Let me put it to the right spot. This is the Raven loses his nose story. The goal here is just to practice the sort of longer stretches of Tlingit. We've got the translation before us. There's a lot of things you can do with these stories. So the story is online on Tlingit.info under the audio tab. I'll make sure that the text is up there for the handouts under beginning Tlingit if anybody wants to follow along. All right, so I'll say it. We'll do one at a time. Duh. One at a time. One at a time. That's it. Anak akakek nuch.
Anak Akakesh Cake Nooch.
Anak yandes katiye.
Anach Yande
Sehati.
Sechati.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing you'll notice if you get that yande, with the S sitting there, it goes yandes. It just sort of grabs on to that one. There's a little flow from one, when things are open vowels to consonants, they just sort of, they tend to run into each other quite a bit. In this case, that S is a contraction of the pronoun hus. So it's pluralizing that verb, saying they were doing that verb. Just a nod day Oops. As a nadik dus achuncha.
As a nodding dig dus uncha.
Wait, echa nade.
Wait. Echad nade. Nade.
Wait, na.
Wena.
Away.
Away.
And then onto the phone. Ketsuji denuk. Oh, I think we might have lost. Connection problems all around. Okay, online, if you guys are there, we're online.
Wasura?
Tlech kwasaku.
Katsu. Kachakala kushuska. Please stand by. Seems. Isn't your guys' class over in like 2 minutes? Well, I guess we just won't have our chance today, I guess.
He must have stopped transmitting completely now.
It says Lance left the group. Lance took to left.
It hasn't been it's been good lately, but today I guess the problem was on their end transmitting.
Oh.
Yeah, too bad. Oh, now.
Oh, I'm tired. All right, there you guys are. Our internet is like turned off over here. I don't know what's going on. I'm blaming Raven for it. Raven's fault. So going through the Raven story, now we've got 1 minute left. I'll show you, well, looking at the handout where we're here, I'll just read the lines that we did, and then we'll call it a day. We'll just see what happens tomorrow. We started on line 16. And let's just read all of these lines. I'll stand, everybody reads. Wait, let me get it. Duh. Not a cake new. Anach yandes oxycodie. Anadictus achun cha. Wait, nade.
Wait, nade.
Wait, Owe. Kestuchi the nuk.
Anat Akawake.
Anach kawa echi.
Awake Kestus, Yevan awake Echa.
Awe echa.
Dasa anak.
Nasa anak.
Take y'all do not put away Suhinde.
Ya dinaku awe sushi.
Right, so Raven, he's back in the water. With that, we're signing off. Boo for technology today, but hooray for technology overall. Mushika Fisakin Sefanen Finishish.
Finishes.
Get in there, guys.
Kaya kwan.
Finishish.